All right, everybody. Thank you for coming back for day 3 of the final day of the Builder Summit. If you do want to continue the conversations, please move it out to the hallway. Thank you to Robin and Cardno for hosting this summit on kind of how to use the Builder data after the fact. So I'll turn it over to them and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Kurt. So, might as well go to the next slide. All right. So today, what we thought we'd talk about today is there's a lot of talk about how around on how the higher levels are using the Builder data. One of the things we've been doing with the Marine Corps program is going around doing regional training, and we thought we'd share some of the observations and feedback that we've gotten on that training from people at the installation level, how they're actually taking Builder data and helping build their annual work plans and go to work. So with that, some of the topics you can see that were hot topics there were BCI, FCI, what is it that headquarters wants us to do, and then how they're actually using it and how they could use it a little better. Okay, safety moment before we go, just a reminder, in case of emergency exit, you go out the doors, there's some stairs down, out the front doors of the hotel, and then the muster area is at that end of the building. So, had our safety moment. All right. So the panel members, just to introduce, my name's Robin St. Charles. I'm with Cardno, part of the Cardno Wood JV. With me today are Doug Barnard, also with Cardno, Greg Wagner from MCICOM, and DeAllen Norris with Wood. Okay, so a little background, a little history on the Marine Corps program. They started implementation in 2007. Spent the next couple of years going to all the installations throughout the world, all the Marine Corps installations throughout the world. And then since then, we've been revisiting the installations on about a 4 to 5 year interval. And so, doing the math, we've been to pretty much all of the installations 3 times. And so they have a very complete data set, been vetted several times now. Also, as I mentioned before, that part of the implementation was regional training, and we've conducted regional training periodically for the past 10 years or so. And and today, this panel, we're going to focus on the observations and the feedback that we got. Now that we've done it, the program's gone through a lot of changes. I mean, in the time since 2007, there have been some very significant catalog changes, which meant, made the refreshes super important because there's, whole component section classifications that went away and new ones came in, and lessons learned all along the way. That we had to catch up on. And then the Marine Corps, another challenge that they had is when they moved the database from Serval to their own servers. And so all of these things have been challenges that have been met and overcome, and the installations are getting the data and they're starting to use it, and we wanted to share some of that. What they're working with at this point is we do the data. They have read-only privileges, I think, at this point, right? So they can write reports. Before that, we did the reports for them. Every time they wanted a new set, they would contact us, and we would run new reports for them. And so a lot of the training focused on what reports are available, and what's in them and how to use them. A lot of the topics that came up yesterday, right? And then we also go into how they use them, and then how we can help them use them better. And we're going to talk about some of that today. And with that, so we might as well just get into some of the issues. One of the big issues up front was the difference between BCI and FCI, how they're calculated, what they tell you. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to, before I do that real quick. So Doug's going to talk about the BCI, FCI. Greg's going to talk about the the headquarters perspective and what they're doing with the data, which is important to the folks, the installations, and then DeAllen's going to go into more specifically how the installations told us they were using the data and things that they wanted to know to help them use it better. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug.
Thank you, Robin. Can everybody hear okay? Just before we get started, I'd like to just get a quick poll from the audience, just because data seems to be used by different levels in the organizations in different ways. So if you're representing like a headquarters organization, could you just raise your hand? Okay, how about the installation level itself? How many folks are from the installation? So we got a few installation level and consultants. Okay.
Oh my God.
All right, good diversity on that. Excellent. So what we're going to do is focus really on how the installation levels are using the data, and proceed from there. Let's see, next slide, please. So we were asked to specifically talk about how to calculate a BCI and what the differences between the BCI and the FCI are. And based upon the discussions we've had so far in the seminar, there's still a lot of confusion around that. Hopefully we can add a little clarity to that. Can't say that or guarantee that there's going to be absolute clarity because it's been discussed for years and years, but if we can add any bit of clarity, that's our objective. So we'll be talking about some similarities and differences between those two metrics. We'll talk about the weighted average, what an actual condition index roll-up is. Talk a little bit about the FCI in the numerator, where that value comes from, what the metrics tell us, and how they're used. So the next slide, please. Okay, so graphically, this chart has been around for a long time, and really what this chart is telling us is that the building condition index is a bottom-up metric, and what that means is we start at the most granular level of the inventory of those building components, and that's the section level. So the first condition index that's calculated is really the component section condition index, and that's down there at the bottom of the chart. Those are rolled up into the component level. And if you think of like the section level, roofing is a good example. You can have a low slope roof, or maybe two sections on a roof. One was replaced, or half of the roof was replaced, so you now have two sections. So those sections would get rolled up into the component. Those sections the components get rolled up into the system, and the systems get rolled up into the building. And this is going to be a repetitive theme throughout the course of this discussion. We'll say it many times in many different ways. Now I know everybody loves math, so here's what it looks like from a mathematical perspective. And so what this is saying on the top is the building condition index is really a roll-up, and what it's a roll-up of is the condition indexes times the CRV, and that's that weighted condition index, dollar weighted condition index, divided by the sum of the CRVs. And we'll get down into that, but that's a formula that is repeated at every level. You can do that at the section level, the component level, the system level, the building level, the installation level. So you'll see that formula again. The formula for facility condition index is really, the driving factors are that it's a sum of the demand, deferred maintenance and repair costs divided by the plant replacement value. And that's factored down into a number between 1 and 100. So we'll get into that in a little bit as well. So as I said, you're going to see the formula for the building condition index roll-ups repeated. And what that's on this chart, what we're showing here is starting at the metric is the component section condition index, the CSCI, and that follows the same formula. It's basically taking every component in there and assigning the condition index, which is assigned through the assessment portion of the program. And that's either through a direct rating, as we've talked about, or several people have talked about, or a stress rating, or an age base. So you take the condition index times the component replacement value to get that sum. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but the point of this slide is that it's the same formula used to roll up whether it's all the components within that system, whether it's all the systems within the building. Once you roll up all those components, you get the higher level of condition index. So I hope that makes sense. We'll dive down into a little more detail.
Doug, are we talking about the CRV? Where does that come from, and what does that represent for folks in the math?
Okay, good question. So the CRV comes from the component catalog. Each of the components they have a value assigned to them in the component catalog. So quite often it gets called the current replacement value. If your catalog is current, you could call it that, but typically we call it the component replacement value. So good question. Thank you for that.
What's our faith in the cost and the catalog costs?
That's a good question.
This is an open question to you guys. What do you guys think about the component values coming into the catalogs? Anybody have an opinion on that? Oh, no, we waited for the microphone to come up for the folks on the.
Not at all. From experience at Fort Hood, we looked at what those costs would wind up being in an actual project. And keep in mind, this was before Searle did the refresh on RS means, so the numbers probably drifted slightly, but it has not drifted far. We had to apply a 2.25x site multiplier in order to get numbers that actually worked based on our project experience.
Anybody else would have an opinion on that? Okay, that was it. You know, sometimes it's one of the things. It's like, hey, here's the math, here's the values, but are the values good? And that affects the output of the calculations,
Yep.
Which is kind of why people don't like FCI. I think is really what it gets down to. But I don't know about the BCI validity.
Okay.
The one thing I would say is that number sounds about right. When we were doing the training, feedback from the installations were that they had to, the number was about 2/3 of what the actual was. So
So are you taking questions now, or are you waiting till the end?
we'll wait till the end.
Okay.
Let's do it. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide then, please. So where does the information come from? And what we found is as we mentioned, at the installation level, they get the various builder reports, and one of the reports that we provide is the final three, the component section report, and this can be provided in an Excel spreadsheet. What you can see, the information is provided is a list of all the sections by building. You see the column there highlighted in green provides the condition index for those sections. It also provides the CRV, which is just the column just to the left of the green column. And then through the magic of Excel, there was a column added called CRV weighted. And what that is the multiplication of the condition index times the CRV at each section. So that's that sum, and that's in the numerator of the formula for the BCI. And that comes from the final three report down to the section level. Next slide, please. And so that is rolled in. You can use that same formula to roll it up down to the building level. And for this particular example, it shows all the systems with the building at the very top. The building condition index in this example is 81, and you can see the various roll-ups at the system level down in that far right column. This could be compared to the final two report on the next slide. And the final two report is the system summary report, and as you can see, we've inserted to the left of the final two report has the system CI, and then the final three system CI as it was calculated through the magic of the Excel spreadsheet. So you can see that's how those numbers line up, and then the final number for the building summary report on the final one building summary report, you can see the BCI down there at the very bottom is 81. So does that make sense, the roll up? And we'll get into some more details, and DeAllen's going to show you some really good examples of how to use this data. But the point of this was just to say, okay, where do I get the data to calculate these BCIs? Now for the fun stuff, the FCI, next slide please. And it's a caution, really one of the hardest challenges to determine the FCI, and I think it's one of the reasons why it doesn't get used very often, is because the deferred maintenance and repair number, like in Builder, it calculates your work plan number, and we understood from other presentations that number can be reset if it's the money spent, so it might keep your FCI at 100 if it thinks there's no DMR, or projects could be added at the installation level, and maybe a commander's level project would add something to that number. So that number is it's kind of hard to pin down, and that's what makes that number fluctuate. If you want to calculate it based just upon the builder data, you can go to the Final One report. If work plans have been run, there's a sum of the work items. That would be the DM&R number in the numerator. And then the plant replacement value comes from, I think typically comes from your real property record. And that's what provides the FCI. So in this case, it shows for that same building that we were using the BCI, we had a BCI of 81, and now we have an FCI of 95. So differences between those two. And with that, we'll dig a little bit longer. We'll dig into the BCI numbers more, but I guess we'll turn it over to Greg for the MCI.
Hey, good morning. I'm Greg Wagner. I'm the Public Works Branch Head at Marine Corps Installations Command. We're out of the Pentagon in DC, and so I've got my strategic partners, the Cardno Wood joint venture, with us, and realize that this is kind of another one of those things, another one of my programs that I have to maintain, and unfortunately I have a gap in my manning at headquarters, and so we have not been paying enough attention to Builder and what it does for us or what it can do for us. And but one of the big things is from Tuesdays, I'm just going to steal a quote from Paul, without consistency, data can't be trusted. So I went down last fall and did the validation kickoff with these guys. So when they go out and start the new task order, they bring their subject matter experts in that are going to go do the assessments for me, and they go through this whole list of how to do the section, all this stuff in detail. How do you do QA, QC? They have an actual program that they run that does a big QC on that to make sure that they're catching the errors quickly, and so the data set I've got is complete. Now my problem is that I'm not making the most out of it, and that's something I need to take back, but I also have been learning stuff this week on how to use it more at the headquarters level and some of the other efforts that I need to talk to these guys a little more in detail once we finish with this event. So BCI and FCI, well, we learned who was running the constrained scenarios. There were like two hands. Everybody else was running unconstrained. Well, that was why I was getting FCIs of 99.5. You know, if anything was off 100, it was at that. And I just didn't know why. Now I understand it. But we, the Marine Corps, have never put FCI into the database, the real property database, because we knew it was wrong. Scale is also different than BCI. There's a white paper on the Searle SMS webpage that explains the two scales on these things, but if you're not doing the scenarios right, you're not generating the correct number, and so that's a big challenge. So we just stay with BCI, and actually OSD is going to go back to reporting BCI over FCI because it's a little more consistent. It's based upon, hey, there's a problem with that component, so that value goes in, and things of that nature, and it gives you a lot of information. The other discussion we've had at headquarters, John Crittenden from Navy and a couple other folks, is that you've got X number of deficiencies, but if you got a huge facility, say 120,000 square feet of admin, you're going to, versus like a 10,000 square foot admin building, the FCIs are going to be different because that PRV denominator is going to skew everything. And so that's some of the nuances that we have there. Everybody understands BCI, and they kind of get that, hey, At an 80, I've used up some of the facility life, and it's probably okay. It's probably meeting its mission. There's probably some stuff that's coming up on replacement, but for the most part, it's okay. A 60, yeah, we really need to put some love into it. And if it's a 95, I don't need to worry about it. But if it's an FCI of a 95, you already dropped out of the good to fair, I think is the next level down, orange, red, whatever, green, green minus. And so people never understood the FCI, and we knew it was wrong, so we just didn't use it. We always referred to BCI, even though we were shoving BCI into our FCI column and reporting it to Congress and stuff like that, but we're at least consistent. We didn't change it, because if you sit there and change something and all of a sudden your number jumps up 20%, people are going to come in and go, why did that happen? Then you have to go explain everything to them, and back to, without consistency, data can't be trusted. Same thing with numbers at the headquarters level. If your number changes, you're going to have to be able to explain why. And that's enough of a challenge when you're trying to go through the budget. How are we using it in facility investment decisions? That's one of the things we're not using so much. I think we're going to be doing some more training with my regions and my installations to try and get use of the detailed information that we can get back out of Builder to do maintenance execution plans, maintenance action plans, and our long-range maintenance plans, because that's something over on the Maximo side I'm facing, and so Builder can help us. And that kind of gets me down to the other thing is reconciling data between Maximo and Builder. Both have location information, both have component information, equipment information. How can I best utilize the system so that I'm only entering the data once? And Maximo is got more information in it than Builder. Builder is just buildings and square foot, things measured in square foot. But my Maximo's got everything else in it, whether it's transformers, manholes, it's all these other things that's in there. So we're moving towards trying to get my Maximo instance to the point where I can use that information to pre-populate Builder, so that Builder, that I'm not having to maintain twice. And if we find something that we're out on inspection, it needs to go back to Maximum. So that's one of the another big thing that I need to work on at headquarters. The other thing is, I was Navy. I was Civil Engineer Corps, then went back to work for the Commander Navy Installations Command. So same type of organization. Blue side, green side, one or the other, same kind of things. And over on the Navy side, NAVFAC really is kind of the executor below the headquarters level. It's a little interesting, but they do everything, but it's done mostly in-house by the in-house folks. When I came over to Marine Corps, much smaller, they try to run very lean, very flat organizations, kind of. And I found out that we had a contract to go do the building inspections. And I thought that was, and it's paid for at headquarters. So from a public works department, DPW perspective, headquarters paid the bill. One less thing I gotta solve, okay? Every 3 years I gotta go host these guys, great, I can do that, that's not a problem. But having to come up with $500,000 or whatever to have them come out on site, I can't afford that out of my operating budget at the installation level. So one of the best things that, and I've been continuing, is funding these bills out of the headquarters level. How do I do that? I pay for it out of my sustainment bill. So is it in the FSM model? It's in mine now. It's in the special bills section, 999X or whatever. OSD is allowing us to put those things, the non-model cost, into FSM. So if your headquarters isn't doing that to pick these bills up, I highly encourage you to do that. Now remember, we're about to kick off FSM 24 this summer, so we're already that. If you need to, hey, it's a collegial group of folks. Army Reserve, Army Guard, regular Army, Air Force, Air Guard, the rest of us, we're all there. We're all the same thing. You pick up the phone and call Thad Buzan at OSD for a question, do it. If you had a question about FSM is fairly straightforward, but there's some of the benefits of being able to do that. And so by having these guys do the contract for me and go through a cycle, I'm about a 3-year cycle to hit the East Coast, West Coast, and Pacific, although that's a challenge. It's going to give me that consistency in a system that will then help me make better decisions overall. You want to talk Pacific? Yeah.
Pacific?
Yeah. We're trying to get these guys out to Okinawa and in the mainland of at Iwakuni, but the challenge is those restrictions. So we're in the hold and wait kind of thing, but hopefully we can get there. But if not, we've got a contingency to continue with going back into the West Coast and maybe Hawaii. So.
So basically yesterday's discussion, COVID.
Yeah. So
it's been a huge impact.
It's like, hey, because the cost of sending these guys to stand by, for the 2.5 weeks, every time they move locations, they'd have to go back into isolation. It was just an exorbitant overhead, and so they didn't want to do it, and we didn't want to pay for it. So it was mutually agreeable to it. So Japan's really nice, but that's it. So over
Okay.
to DeAllen.
All right, I'll take over. I probably don't need this up there. I'll leave it with you guys. I don't need that mic, right? Use that one. So I'm a show and tell guy, and I'm going to go up here for a moment. And I have my notes, so I'm not reading emails. Okay, one of the key things that I want to discuss, and the confusion that we find when we're still need it. Okay, sorry, thank you. One of the big challenges that we find when we're out training is, one is understanding the roll-ups of the condition indexes. And secondly is early on, as Robin said, we've been training at the regional level, and by regional level we mean we go to Japan, and everyone from Public Works in Japan and Korea come and to our training, and sometimes Hawaii comes, or sometimes Hawaii comes west, but we do that to help our installations understand what it is we're doing, why we're collecting the information, and how to interpret the reports that we give them and actually use those reports. So what I wanted to do was kind of clear up and hopefully answer some questions about the roll-ups of condition index. But one thing I do want to make clear is, the concept we're discussing here is not new. I saw some people who are new to Builder, right? Who's new to Builder within the last 5 years, okay? These concepts are not new. These concepts have been in place since the 1970s with the introduction of paver, and in the 1980s with the introduction of roofer. And then, those were all used. I've used the terminology. How many of you have kids or grandkids that refer to the 1990s as the turn of the century or the late 1900s? In the late 1900s, these concepts were used across DOD and industry for roofer and paver. So in the early 2000s, this concept began to apply to other building systems. And prior to DOD driving this, we were doing this work in the industrial community, and General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, large property owners, helping them get a handle on their repair and replacement needs. So the concepts aren't new, but what I want to make sure people understand is how these condition indexes are rolled up, as Doug explained, and how they're used and how they can help find work. Because the biggest challenge we know with clients the size of the Army and the Marine Corps is just the magnitude of tens of thousands of buildings, millions of building component sections. How do you get your arms around that, and how do you determine where to go actually execute work, whether it's at the Public Works shop level or at the project level, because you really need to accomplish work across that entire spectrum to keep your buildings in good operating order and maintain their condition. So just as an understanding, one of the things, and this is very crude, but I do this from the standpoint of one of the challenges that we always, or not always, but sometimes get is the condition index in my building, the BCI is an 84, but I know that the HVAC system and the electrical systems in that building need to be upgraded or replaced. Why is my BCI so high? I can't justify that, okay? So understanding how each of these systems, how this roll-up works will help hopefully define that. The Air Force took a great approach yesterday, who was presenting yesterday. One of the great approaches there was to go with what they call the Big Seven, and that's really focus on the things that you sustain. Do condition assessments of your systems, but focus on the ones that you sustain, so that when you're communicating needs and communicating rolled up condition indexes, you're actually talking about the things that you're going out and sustaining, like your HVAC systems, your electrical systems, your fire protection systems, and only address those non-sustained systems when you need to, when there's an issue, when there's a structural issue, go address those, but take them out of the discussion. That was a really good approach. So what happens often is you may, for example, these, let me go to the left here real quick. So, these are your uniform mat systems, A10, A20, B10, B20, and so on down the line. So, if everything goes along, and I've just plugged some dollar values in here, the main thing was to kind of show. So, in this case, if I come down to HVAC, or I'll come down to roofing, it's a little bit simpler. So, in the case of roofing, if my roofing is actually, what's the effect on the building condition index? If I drop that to 50, and I drop that to 50, and I drop that to 50, I only changed my BCI by 1 point, because the BCI is using the roll-up of all those other systems. So mentally, I know I have a roofing issue at this building. I need to replace the roof at this building. I can't use the building condition index or the BCI to help me find that decision. I've got to step down a level. So if I step down a level to the SCI, I can see that, boom, there's my 50 that I'm looking for. So now, in order to find work, I can't just look across the BCIs and say which ones are yellow or red. I've got to take a little bit deeper dive into the system to determine which systems do I need to approach. But even then, you have to take another deeper dive, because within systems, different component sections have different design lives and performance lives. You have boilers that last 40 years and air handling units that last 15. Or are you going to wait until that boiler drives your SCI down to visually see it? Or are you going to dive one more step down and start looking at boilers versus unit heaters and rooftop air conditioning units? So the way you do that, basically, the roll-up, going back to the equation that Doug provided us earlier, it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to take the condition index times its current replacement value, and I'm going to calculate a value called CI/CRV, or weighted CI. I'm going to sum all those up, then I'm going to divide them by the CRV, and that'll get me a dollar-weighted condition index. Once I do that, I can then apply that at any level. Because as Doug indicated, we're assigning a condition index by direct rating, or we'll just stick with direct rating. We're assigning a direct rating. That's at that particular section. Above that is my component section, or my component, and then my system, and then my BCI. So if I want to determine what the building condition or the BCI is, I'm going to roll up all of the sections within that building. I'm going to summarize their CI times their CRV, so I have 190 sections. I'm going to divide that by the CRV, and I'm going to get a BCI of 89. Looks great. If I want to then look at that at the system level, I can take that same equation and say only summarize the ones, bear with me 1 sec, sorry. Only summarize the foundations. So in this case, I can take all of the foundations within a installation, and this goes to Jason yesterday was asking a question about, can I get a Final 9 report? Everybody knows what a Final 9 report is. If you don't, I'll show you in just a second. But can I get a Final 9 report at the installation level? The answer to that is yes. It's actually very simple. using the same roll-up methodology. I take all of the A10 component sections at an installation, apply this equation, roll them up, and say that is the rolled-up condition index or rolled-up SCI of foundations for that installation. Now, the mechanics of doing that is a little difficult because you have a big data set, so most of us can build reports to do that. Right now, that's not available. So, so in this case, for this particular installation, if I want to look at the condition of my foundations or the condition of my roofing, I have 983 roofing sections worth $38 million that have a condition index rolled up of 81. So what we're doing, and the reason I'm showing you this, is this clear how we're rolling this up? We're taking and saying we want to roll up all of the sections to get a condition index of the installation. We want to roll up all of the sections in a building to get a BCI, or all of them in a HVAC to get a SCI for the HVAC. Does that make sense? So with that, and where I'm going with this is once you determine this, you can start looking at where do I have potential problems from a system perspective. So by rolling up HVAC, I can see that my roll-up of an HVAC is 69, but now I can actually expand that out and start looking at where are the issues that drive that? Which sections drive that rolled up? So here's a 64, here's so greens, yellows, greens, yellows, greens, yellows. So if you run a work plan, those of you who were here on Tuesday, and some we talked yesterday about running a work plan, you set up your scenarios to go find these, right? Your scenario says, go through all of my inventory and look for items that have a remaining service life of 2 years or less, and build a work plan item to replace that. Or you can say anything that has a condition index of 50 to 75 or 60 to 80. Build something for me to go repair that. Okay, that's all good stuff. But one of the challenges at the installation level is if headquarters of each of the entities defines that differently or defines those rules differently, you'll get a different answer. And that's one of the reasons that FCI is so challenging. If you say replace it at 2 years remaining service life and you say replace it at less than 5 years remaining service life, the value of the replacements are going to be significantly different. So your FCI is going to be significantly different, but your condition index is not. Your rolled up condition index is not, because that's based on its condition and its current replacement value. So how are the installations using this for the Marine Corps? Well, we provide, as part of our deliverable, a final one, which was a facility condition and facility condition summary, and that gives you your BCIs, which at the headquarter level, everybody, BCIs is important, right? The final two is a summary of your system condition indexes. Final three, which is what we really want to, what we're really using out there, is that's every section that we've collected on that installation. So now our installations can come in and look for things like, show me anything that has a remaining service life of less than 5 years, or let's just say 5 years or less, and the value is less than $5,000. Go to less than or equal to $5,000. And so one of the first things they do is say, okay, here's some items that we can actually get our shop to go do. We can actually do something about this. We don't have to build a project. Now, that is, in this case, for this building, I have one item, it's a 64, I can go take action on that. So we're actually so what the installations are basically doing is not waiting for that work plan to be run to come down and push work all the way down, is they're actually using the data to go find things that they can take action on. And they start out by, what can my shop go do? What authority or spending authority do I have to go have the shop do it? The next level then is, a smaller project. So you may take that CRV and expand that to up to $10,000. Whatever your spending limits are at the installation is how you define this. So they're building work actionable work as soon as they get the information. So think about if Greg is going to say, I'm going to run the work planning at the headquarters level, and I'm going to push it down to you for actionable work, how long is that going to take? It's going to take some time, right? It's probably taking time on the Army side, right? You guys are still figuring out the parameters, figuring out what the scenarios are, figuring out what you're going to do. But you're collecting data that can actually be used. So Marine Corps installations are realizing that and saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go into your data, we're going to find the low-hanging fruit, we're going to put work orders together, we're going to put small projects together, and then just keep hammering away. Because one of the things that I hear a lot during these is, you got to be able to build a project. You got to be able to build a project. That's true. But one of the issues is if you're always focusing on the big project, you're never going to replace the roof section that's leaking over the mechanical room. Because it never hits your radar, because you're always looking at building conditions and system conditions. You really want to start looking and driving down and finding those actionable items. But ultimately, return on investment is what we're looking for. Right? How do we improve these facilities with the least amount of money? And that's where the work planning comes in. That's where the SMS process comes in and has been proven for so long. Let it work its flow. Set up your parameters, run your parameters, figure out how much work you need based on this parameter. Change the parameters, mess with it. How much money do I have? How much money? That's all your strategic planning that the SMS process is intended to do. But I'm not telling you how to do it, but our installations have said, great, we understand that, we buy into that, you guys, we've been doing this for 10 years. But in the meantime, we're going to find actionable work, and we can do that now that we understand, because headquarters has sent us out to help train them and show them and let them understand the data and understand, back in my situation, of why is the BCI not dropping because I have a system that has an issue, so that now that they understand that, they can take action. All right? So I know a lot of these programs, the Army, we've been involved in most all of them, right? And so it takes time. It takes time to make those decisions. There's a lot of decision makers. But I'm interested, and one of the reasons we brought this up, we were interested to say, what are your thoughts on the way the Marine Corps installations are using this to actually get work and do work? And are any of your installations using that approach in addition to the work planning and putting things together in large packages? Are your installations using that? Okay. So one last thing on the building, on the roll-up CI, and this is important because this is how I like to think. Within installations, when you're talking to inspectors or planners or whoever you're talking to, someone always has a specialty, right? Are you a roofing person? Or are you an HVAC person? You're an electrical person. That's what they understand. That's what they want to talk about, and that's the data they want to look at. So one of the challenges is when you get this huge spreadsheet or you get this download out of Builder, it has all this data in it. But I'm an HVAC guy. That's all I think about. How do I look at the condition of the HVAC? Because that's what my boss wants me to do. Help figure out what's the condition of the HVAC, how do I improve the HVAC, so how do I get the information related to HVAC? And that's where the roll-ups really come into play. That's where they're powerful, because you can come into an installation and you can look at the rolled-up condition of the HVAC, and then if you actually look one step down below the system at the building component level, now you can start looking at things like, well, give me 1 sec, I gotta go hit a filter here and then we'll, so I'm going to put my HVAC hat on. I only want to look at HVAC. I only want to look at that because that's all I think about. So now if I'm looking at the rolled up condition at the component level, I can now look at the boilers. At my installation, I have 43 boilers worth $41 million, and their rolled up condition index is a 79, or the BCCI. So anyone that's in Builder, if you're in Builder and navigating down the tree, you hit the installation, look over there, there's a CI. That's the CI for the installation. Drill down to the the special area. Look over there, there's a rolled up condition index for the special area. Drill down to the building, there's a BCI. Drill down the system, there's an SCI. All of those are coming down. And so what we do is we say, okay, if boilers are on your mind and you have a boiler contract and you want to know what the condition of your boilers are, group them by boilers. Which buildings have boilers? This building has 4 boilers. And a 76, this one has 1. This one has, well, at least have 1. But now you can actually start looking at where are the problems in my boilers. If I looked at the BCI again, I would probably never find this, right? So if I continue to walk down to my systems and to my my components, and then actually getting all the way, in this case, I'm all the way down to the material. So I'm looking at what is the condition of my boilers versus my furnaces versus my unit heaters. And in this case, if I have a boiler contractor, if I have a boiler contract, I have some information about that. Why is the condition of the boilers in this building this way? Instead of not really knowing, right? Not waiting for someone to call me and say the boiler broke down. I can actually utilize this data to get down to that level and group those things together. All right? So a lot about this, I could talk about this for days, but I'm not allowed to do that. So I'm going to hand it back over to Robin for questions. This spreadsheet is embedded into the PowerPoint presentation if you download it. For those of you who are Excel users, it's pretty straightforward. It's a pivot table off of the data, and then there's some roll-ups in this as well, and some things that I added. So just real quickly, and then I'll stop talking. One of the things about this, I wanted to show you one thing right here. So if I look at it, if I go and I look at this data set, and I don't remember how many sections are in here, but it's several thousand because this is an entire installation that I downloaded. If I come into this and look for, I want to look for anything with a CI of less than or equal to 50, right? So that's red in our world. Okay, so there's all of the sections that have a CI of less than or equal to 50. Now, what I did is, as I inserted some columns to the left for SCI and BCI. So look at this. If you're looking at the SCI and you're looking at only red SCI, you would have missed that one, right? Because that SCI is 87. Is that too small? Can you guys see that? The SCI on this particular building is 87. So if you were looking for actionable work, you wouldn't really catch that. You've got to go down another level in order to actually find that. So what I did on the spreadsheet was just kind of build these in that says, here's the CI, here's the next level CI, here's the next level roll up, and here's the next level roll up. So you can do some of these. Would I find this? How would I find this item? Okay. So I'll stop there and hand it back to you, Robin.
Can we do the mic and we lost that mic somewhere.
That one or this one?
It's still working.
Thanks, Neil. So kind of sum things up. What we saw when we were at the training, the installation folks came out and they told us, we're taking the final 3 and we're cutting it off at our authority level, and we're just going out and doing that work and then calling the thing out, and we want to know more about how to find and package kind of medium range projects that we are still within our authority. And so one of the things we showed him in DeAllen, those things he was demonstrating to you were little tools and tricks that we gave them to help them do that and get through that data, call through it. Another thing they were interested in, you heard from Greg on, what's headquarters doing with this data and what do they want us to do. And so that was feedback that we got, and that's part of the training. And we try to augment that every time we go, give them updates on how it's going. And so there's, bottom line is the installations and the Marine Corps are out there taking the data and they're putting it to use, telling it out, within their authority limits, and finding work, validating the builder data, and having at it. So that and open it up to questions. Yeah.
I have two questions. After they replace or they repair the items, are they going back to builder, and update builder? The installations?
Not right now. They only have read authority.
Yes.
So they're marking up the stuff and keeping track of it, but right now they're not doing it. But Greg, I'll set this up for you, but the plan, the strategy is that is when they get into it, yeah, they'll be going through and updating the builder data just for the things that change. Right?
Now, second question. The re-inspections every 4 to 5 years, how different they are from the previous inspection?
They're pretty different, but I'll let DeAllen go into that because he gets into that data a little more than I do.
So I just want to clarify, by different, you mean different in execution or different in results?
When you do the first inspection, and you go there every 4 or 5 years because they haven't updated data,
Right.
how different they are, how
The changes?
the percentages change?
Yeah, they're actually pretty significant, quite honestly. I don't have statistics to share, but they are pretty significant. And as Robin indicated, you know, one of the things that really paid off for doing this is changes in catalogs and changes in the system. There are several installations that, you know, have gone through training multiple times, and one of the things that I always tell them, sell them, whatever, convince them, is that it's their data, and taking ownership of it is important, is critical. That the more they understand the data, the more they're interested in actually updating the inventory when things change. It's not enterprise-wide that installations go and update data. We're not there. I know something like the Air Force is really driving that, and the Army's looking at that too. But it's a goal that we're always pursuing, and that is getting the installation to take ownership and update the data. So one of the challenges during the training that I always put forth is just pick a building that you're renovating. Just pick one and go in and update your inventory. And as you do that, you will see it's not really that hard. And most importantly, now you're telling the most current story to headquarters, right? And so when you get that pride of ownership, that's when it'll start driving. It says, I want to be able to tell headquarters to the best of my ability what the condition of the building is by updating the data. It's got a...
And just to tag on that, what we find with the Marine Corps installations, some are more eager. There's some that are just out there, and I think some folks have gotten right privileges and are starting to do that.
Yeah.
But they're just starting.
Robin.
Yeah.
Given the combined factors of none of us trust the CRV because none of us trust the component costs, and the reality of repair by replace for much of this equipment, is there a reason that you're using the CRV for determining what the shops can do other than the PRV on those?
Well, that's the number that's in the report, right? So, and they pick it, they know there's a fairly good number for adjusting it, and they know what their authorization limit is, so they just, it works for them.
Remember what you're talking about. When you get down into the real data of breaking a building down, you're going into the component replacement value. The PRV is calculated at the fact level, the 4-digit fact level. So it's a gross number at the, hey, what kind of fact, how big is it, and where is it, and then you get a value out of that. So that's why you don't use PRV, you gotta use PRV. Now, my recommendation is that, hey, even if your scale is wrong, you at least know what it is, and you can sit there and go, hey, pick off that list and say, hey, it's the HVAC needs replacement on building 100, and we need to get that into the cycle. So that'd be my value on that.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to add too, because the confidence in the CRV, or the confidence in the replacement value, is very challenging. It's always been challenging. But one of the things that Searle has done is they've gone to RS means, and hopefully the cost catalog is more reliable or more trustworthy now. versus a catalog that was, built 15 years ago and may not have been updated properly. So that's one step, is to improve the actual source data for the costs. The second part is when you're looking at RS means and you're looking at these cost estimates in SMS systems, you have to start somewhere with a baseline. And if you get a good solid baseline, then you can use factors to adjust those CRVs to get up to where you believe it needs to be. I did a program for I won't share where, but their cost multiplier was a 10. So everything was 10 times what RS means was. And they knew that, and they understood that, and so all of their budgeting was based on 10 times RS means. So in your case, if you're saying it's 2.5 times, work with headquarters to make sure that the adjustment factors in Builder are properly calculating that CRV off of the base catalog. So within Builder, you have the location cost factor, right? That's on the first, you go to your installation and you click on your installation and you look at the first page and it'll tell you what your cost factor is, and that comes from the DoD pricing guide. So if you're finding that the prices are not, are 2.5 times left, start working with your headquarters and figure out how do we apply factors so that the outcome is closer in dollars, so that you can start to build that confidence. Okay, that's my suggestion, because I've dealt with this for years and I've worked with other programs, and that was, it's always been the complaint that the values that are coming out for current replacement value don't match what I have, because you have different markups, different things that need to be applied. So start with a good basis, which I think you probably have right now with RS means, and start working on your not your inflation factors, but your factors to get it to your location, to get the costing to your location.
1 second, guys. I'm sorry. Real quick, the virtual attendees, I need you to mute all mics and shut off video, please.
Yes, it's the, if you ever shot a rifle and you're looking at the results of, you shoot 5 rounds, and is your grouping really tight but not in the center? That's one thing. If you're all over the board, that's another. So, because if you're in a tight group, then it's just a matter of figuring out what the scope adjustment is to move it to where you want it to end up. Same thing with the pricing guides. At OSD, we're in a constant dialogue. Mr. McAndrew is very interested in Builder. He's very interested in the whole process. He's trying to get everything out of parametric modeling into more detailed inputs. And part of this is, hey, if we're off on something like this, put the case together and start feeding it up so that the folks that go to these boards have the information. If they think about it, they'll try and get a call out to you guys to try and get the inputs or put a call for information out. But sometimes it's not, but just go ahead and push it forward and send it up to headquarters and say, hey, we think this is off, and it'll probably get to the right folks, and we can share it with OSD, and we'll probably fight for that. This is the FSM model, same kind of thing. Which sustainment unit costs are we going to go look at every year? We kind of go through this stuff. I owe my input next week for Marine Corps, what we're interested in. And sometimes the service can go take the lead and do that. When I was at Navy, our dry dock costs, sustainment costs were way off. They were underdone, and so we put together our historic costs, and that went in and became part of the data book that drove the cost on that. The other one is fiber, outside plant, all your cables, copper, fiber, coax, all that stuff. They read a paper that said fiber optics last forever. There's no sustainment required on that. So we finally got a sustainment cost put into it. So OSD is open to being able to adjust the cost. So if you got a good story, push it forward, start sharing it, and we'll try and get those into some of the other factors that we use. Any more questions to wrap up? Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, we got some online questions.
Sure.
We got a few of them here. While we're also trying to hunt for the hot mic that's messing with the audio. What level of access do the HQs have, and what level should they have?
Well, I'm the system owner. I pay for the thing, so it's as much as right now I can't get into my own instance. my account got deactivated. But I have write access in there. We haven't shared a lot of that. Like I said, this program, we've been doing a lot of mechanics, but haven't necessarily been taking care of the value of the system itself. And so that's one of the things I wrote down is like, hey, how can we do this better? And I think I need to add people to write access to do stuff. But they need to understand the system so that they don't do something stupid. Because it's easy to overwrite good information with bad information, as you'll learn with diving into it. So that's a concern. Next question, Paul.
All right, hang on. I am now I'm unmuted, everybody. All right, now I'm back up here for everybody online. Builder seems to be engineering maintenance tech friendly. What is the benefit of using Builder as a real property management tool?
It's beyond the scope.
My real property system is called NFADS, Navy Facility Access Database, and so that's where my real property maintains all the property record cards. Maximo is my maintenance system, and so I should have all my components in there. Builder needs to be integrated with those two because there's common data elements that need to go through them. But Builder itself is not set up to be a program of record. And when you say program of record, that means auditable. And even my Maximo system is not set up as a program of record per se, because it's not going to be auditable. And so you've got to, there's some linguistic connotations to program of record. But for real property, you really need to have something that's locked down that very few people have access rights to, and it doesn't change much. But you have other systems you go to do management around it, and management's different. So computer, Maximo's my maintenance management, Builder's my assessment management for buildings and stuff like that. So you can utilize those fairly heavily, but like I said, you got to get the data to integrate to be as effective as possible.
What issues occur between the maintenance engineering cost data and the real property valuation, if any?
I'm not sure I understand the question either.
I think that gets back to our CRV, PRV, sustainment costs versus against the CRV values of the catalogs. And like I said, they're catalogs, they're parametric. The sustainment unit cost, if you guys aren't familiar with that, that is, we take the average building and say it's 10,000 square feet of admin space. We figure that over its design life is 40 years. Over that 40 years that we're going to do X number of annual maintenance, so that's one factor, and then the X number of replacements of different components, doors, windows, carpets, and things of that nature. That all goes into this, and they annualize that and divide it by the 10,000 square feet to come up with a cost per square foot for that fact. So your admin facility, your 6,100, has $3.45 a square foot, and then you multiply that back out in the area cost factor. So there's, you need to understand how the number you arrive at the number that they're giving to you, and that what that number really means. It's not, down at the component, that's the sustainment costs are going to be an average over the life of the facility. And so every year we get shorted, we're not maintaining those curves, so we're falling below the curves so that our numbers come down.
And then one comment and one more question. Excellent presentation, plain simple, easily understood. Thank you, with a smiley face.
Yeah.
And then last question, are services sharing data on joint bases?
We haven't done it.
Yeah, as far as I know, is that from at the headquarters level, the joint bases for me, Marine Corps, Henderson Hall is Henderson Hall, Fort Myer, and so it's an Army problem. And for the most part, the real property is not on my books, it's on the Army books. It's gotten transferred, the budget's over them. So, you know, the only time I'm concerned is if there's really a tenant issue, and then we come back in and say, hey, every once in a while we have to do this. When I was a Navy owner, we had Fort Sam Houston, I think, actually, San Antonio. Some barracks that had issues with a lack of insulation on the chill water pipes. So you had condensation that was ruining the ceiling tiles, causing mold, and a civil problem with drainage for the heavy downpours. The water ran to the building instead of waved from the building, and it kind of came perked up through the chains, and then it went to the secretary, and then came back down and, hey, we'll do the special project, and we'll take ownership of the building. And so from that standpoint, there's not really a lot of sharing of data between there. Now, anybody heard of Advana? Okay. OSD has a big data store. It's called Advana, A-D-V-A-N-A, okay? This is where they're ingesting all these different data sources, financial, real property, all these other things. They're going to pull it up so that they can do real property. They're going to do financial reporting, real property reporting, all sorts of other things. The other one, which is pretty cool, is called Game Changer, where they're ingesting all the instructions and doing smart native language intelligence in there. So you can go, hey, I want to go search on real property. It'll go through the Army instructions, Air Force, Navy. It'll go through the congressional stuff. You can filter this all out. And it's a great way to go try and find some of these problems. I highly recommend you guys go look at that. Advana itself, with the data sources, you need to have a CAT card. If you don't have one, you're not going to get in. Game Changer is outside of it, but it's useful if you're trying to research some of the other stuff that goes along with some of our guidance.
And I lied, there's one more. And we're a little bit over time, so we'll try to do this quick. What determines area cost factors?
DoD pricing guide.
Yeah, that's I think Searle or somebody does the analysis for DoD and looks at the engineering record and the costs that are coming out, and they do the calculations. DC is pinned as 1.0, so DC is always going to be whatever that price is, and for the most part, you'll find that the area cost factor is not going to change much. You know, the Southeast is lower cost of living, so the price probably be below 1. West Coast slightly above, and overseas is, you know, Japan, Hawaii, the islands are all around 2.6, and they fluctuate just a little bit. So that drives it, but it's somewhere done in that. And if you look at the UFC 3-Tech 107 or something like that, or 3-Tech 3. It's one of the UFCs talks about it. I just don't know if the 3-Tech 704, 703, and it kind of walks you through all that stuff. So you can go look up area cost factor.
There was actually a follow on that. UFC 3-701-3. There you go.
Why didn't you have that memorized, Paul?
I know.
Like I said, I was spitballing. I was like, oh, let's see if I got a, can I have an idiot savant moment here and pull that out of my head?
Any last ones from the house?
You good? Thank you very much.
Thanks.